Our project is 4A, Slow and Steady Wins the Race, for slow-growing broilers by Morgan, Emma, Juliet, Eliza, and Sophie.
Our stance on the broiler industry controversy of slow-growing versus fast-growing broilers favors slow-growing broilers. The broiler industry should produce slow-growing chickens to decrease the incidence of birds growing faster than their bones and cardiovascular systems can support. The main reasons for supporting the production of slow-growing broilers is because of the consumer preference and the concerns of animal welfare. The welfare concerns associated with fast-growing broilers are paramount in comparison to slow-growing broilers.
The primary point of disagreement within the debate is that genetic selection for increased growth rates in broiler chickens has led to the emergence of cardiovascular diseases in fast-growing broilers, whereas slow-growing broilers do not experience these cardiovascular problems. Although slow-growing have a lower feed efficiency and thus are more expensive to raise, they tend to produce a better meat quality and have fewer issues with cardiovascular diseases and heat stress. In addition, slow-growing broilers are preferred by consumer concerns about animal welfare, according to Hen in 2017, and thus can develop a niche market. Fast-growing broilers, on the other hand, do tend to be cheaper to raise due to a higher feed efficiency and greater amount of chickens can be produced within a given time frame, meeting the consumer demand as stated by the National Chicken Council, which brings in a higher profit. Despite being preferred by producers, fast-growing broilers have more cardiovascular issues and are more susceptible to heat strokes.
The issue of cardiovascular problems in fast-growing broilers holds significance in a myriad of factors. In particular, the issue relates to the welfare of broilers. Keeping in mind the 5 freedoms, raising fast-growing broilers with the knowledge of the cardiovascular repercussions violates the freedom from pain, injury, and disease, as well as the freedom from discomfort, as fast-growing broilers are more susceptible to heat stress. The industry and farmers involved would also see increased costs in the feed needed to raise the broilers for a longer period of time, but this could be counteracted by the ability to market slow-growing broilers to a niche market of people who would pay a higher price, as those who prefer organic food would also prefer slow-growing broilers.
The bulk of research related to the broiler industry is related to fast-growing broilers. However, we are now going to narrow the spectrum and look into articles associated with cardiovascular diseases and fast-growing broilers. The article, Histopathological Studies of the Heart in 3 Lines of Broiler Chickens, discusses the negative effects associated with fast-growing chickens, which mainly focuses on cardiovascular conditions such as sudden death syndrome, ascites syndrome, and heart lesions. Another article, Distinct Genes and Pathways Associated with Transcriptome Differences in Early Cardiac Development Between Fast and Slow-Growing Broilers, state that fast-growing broilers are more likely to suffer fatalities from sudden death syndrome, ascites syndrome, hypoxemia, and lameness due to inadequate development of other organs, including heart, liver, intestine, lungs, and skeleton ossification. The main morphological difference of cardiac muscles were related to stress and nutrient-rich diets of fast-growing broilers with the result of heart disease. Both of these articles explain and identify morphological differences of cardiac muscle that was found to be related to fast-growing broilers with heart disease.
The table above lists the cases of cardiac morphology in broilers at 6 different ages. As you can see, the most prevalent cases were the degeneration of the cardiomyocytes. First, let's take a look at the broilers who were randomly selected to be euthanized at 3 days of age. We can see that 2 broilers showed evidence of congestion of the myocardium in the septum, and 3 broilers showed evidence of it in the left ventricle. We can also see that 4 broilers showed evidence of edema, 2 in the right ventricle and 2 in the septum, at 3 days of age. Now let's jump to broilers at 38 days of age. At 38 days, we see a high number of complications in the left ventricle. 3 broilers had congestion of the myocardium in the left ventricle, 2 broilers had edema in the left ventricle, 6 broilers had degenerative cardiomyocytes, and more. In total, we can see that 62 broilers had degenerative cardiomyocytes.
A study conducted by Zhang and other authors was conducted to examine the ways that genes influence the growth of cardiovascular tissues in fast and slow-growing broiler chickens. The study found that fast-growing broilers have more genes associated with cardiac issues than do slow-growing broilers. These genes may exacerbate cardiac issues such as ascites in fast-growing broilers. These birds are showing signs of cardiac development issues during the early stages of life, which is not only harmful for the bird's health, but it also increases the loss of life due to cardiac issues such as ascites and sudden death syndrome. This image displays the effects that broilers receive due to their accelerated growth rate. As the study suggests, slow-growing broilers are less likely to develop cardiac problems and other related health concerns due to the differences in genetic composition.
This graph illustrates the predicted differences between diseases and biofunctions of fast and slow-growing broilers at 6 and 21 days of age. According to the image, a broiler at day 21 has a higher probability of cell death than at day 6, whereas there is no indication that a broiler at day 21 will have leukocytes. When examining cell death between day 6 and 21, it is more likely to see death at day 21 than at day 6. When comparing the extent of the cell death in Illinois and Ross breeds, it is obvious that the fast-growing Ross breeds generally experience more cell death than slow-growing. We can also identify categories that had no indication for evidence. For instance, the Ross breed did not have any evidence of differentiation of March pages or T lymphocytes. This clarifies that the main category affected are related to cell death, cell morphology, and tissue death.
This graph was taken from a study that examined the gene difference between slow and fast-growing broilers during early development. The article published by Zhang and other authors shows the ratio of heart weight to body weight for both lines of broilers at both ages 6 and 21 days. The graph B shows the difference in the heart to body weight ratio between a breed of fast and slow-growing broilers. The fast-growing broilers have a smaller heart to body weight ratio at 21 days than the slow-growing broiler does. You can see that Ross broilers have a much smaller heart compared to their body weight than does the Illinois broiler. The study emphasizes that the Ross breed is more likely to have cardiac issues due to the heart to body weight size ratio. A broiler with a smaller heart compared to body weight is going to have a difficult time circulating blood properly and is more likely to develop ascites. Here are some common arguments of those in favor of the fast-growing broilers. Fast-growing chickens are more profitable for producers, while slow-growing chickens take up more resources such as space and feed before actually reaching the market. Slow-growing chickens are detrimental to the environment due to their low feed efficiency and increased waste output. According to the National Chicken Council, slow-growing chickens take almost twice as long to reach market weight, and because of this require more feed, fuel, water, and land per pound of meat to sustain their growth. Because of this, the council claims that slow-growing broilers are about 3 times more expensive to raise than fast-growing broilers. The National Chicken Council also mentions that broilers today are bred to grow faster as well as stronger and healthier than ever before, while also requiring fewer natural resources to raise.
The National Chicken Council states that today's chicken breeders use DNA mapping and animal health diagnostic tools to detect underlying traits like heart health, susceptibility to disease, bone density, and joint health to identify the best birds to breed, improving both the health and size of the next generation of chickens. As you can see in the table, it represents data that states the mortality of fast-growing and slow-growing broilers are the same. The question you may ask yourself may be, is this completely accurate? While there have been improvements to the health and welfare of fast-growing broilers, a higher percentage of these birds are still subject to the impacts of cardiovascular issues, including deaths from sudden death syndrome and heart lesions. The National Chicken Council also states that there have been fewer issues with the leg strength and skeletal structure due to the better genetic selection. While this is all fine and dandy, there is still evidence of broilers developing bone deformities and lameness as they grow and mature. With this in mind, it is also important to consider that the National Chicken Council may be a source of bias because they are trying to promote the largest and fastest growing broilers due to consumer demand. The only accurate information within this table is that fast-growing broilers obviously grow faster and weigh more than slow-growing broilers.
This image from the National Chicken Council illustrates the arguments for fast-growing broilers. It claims that the extra 2 weeks it takes to raise slow-growing broilers to market weight have significant environmental impacts. The council argues that the increased food intake required for slow-growing broilers leads to an increased manure production, releasing damaging chemicals into the environment. The image also argues that farms should switch back to or continue raising fast-growing broilers in order to lower broiler prices for consumers. However, as previously stated, this perspective only considers the broiler industry and tries to promote the option that brings in more profit but is not necessarily better for animal welfare. It is clear that the fast-growing broiler is in the best interest of the industry as they have a higher feed efficiency and thus reach the market more quickly. However, if the broilers are not healthy, then they cannot be slaughtered for market. Therefore, the industry would not make any profit. That said, in a world becoming more and more aware of the importance of animal health and welfare, the pro-fast-growing broiler stance will not hold up if this consumer trend continues.
Although fast-growing chickens are more profitable due to their high feed efficiency and large yield of meat, the demand of slow-growing chickens is on the rise. High-end restaurants and holistic markets are realizing that the accelerated growth rate of the regular broiler chickens is detrimental to the health and welfare, which directly affects the taste of their meat. Slow-growing chickens may take about 2 extra weeks to grow to market size than the faster-growing breeds, yet they're regarded as having a better and juicier taste. As Chef Antoine Westerman from Le Coq Rico, a high-end French restaurant situated in New York City, phrases it, "When an animal has a good life, you feel it in the meat." In view of better chicken welfare and improved taste, major food providers like Panera and Whole Foods, among others, have pledged to switch over to only selling slow-growing breeds by 2024. The broiler industry is seeing a movement towards more humanely sourced meat, fueled by both consumer demand and welfare activists. The Global Animal Partnership, one of the largest animal welfare labeling programs in North America, is pushing producers to switch over to slow-growing chickens with the new 2018 updated Certificate of Requirements for Broiler Systems. In this document, slower growth rates are encouraged due to the evidence highlighting the inability of the bone and organ structures of the current fast-growing breeds to keep up with the overly accelerated muscle growth in these chickens. Additionally, guidelines requiring the daily nourishment of chickens were put in place to counteract the cruel practice of severely limiting the food and water intake of breeding chickens as to slow the muscle production and weight gain before the chicken is no longer able to viably reproduce.
In conclusion, the future of the controversy between slow-growing and fast-growing broilers may include the decline in production of fast-growing broilers or genetic improvement. The decline may be a result of consumer preference. More and more consumers want to know where their food is coming from and how it was raised. Consumer preference today is guided towards organic options, and most consumers who choose organic meat will most likely choose slow-growing broilers. Research is being conducted to improve genetics of fast-growing broilers with selective breeding. As Zhang and others state within their research, to be able to improve cardiac health in broilers through breeding, they have to be able to distinguish which genes contribute to cardiac dysfunction. The animal welfare of fast-growing broilers is a major concern due to their forced accelerated growth rate. Slow-growing broilers should become prominent to eliminate the concerns of animal welfare and satisfy all the 5 freedoms. Even though producers' profit may decrease to the longer length of time required to get broilers to market, consumers prefer their products to come from industries where animal welfare is not at risk. Therefore, fast-growing broilers do not meet the criteria for the consumers due to the high concerns of animal welfare because of their accelerated growth rate affecting their cardiovascular and bone development.